In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to make cuttings like a professional, step by step. Hi, I'm Dr. Elsa de Tooy from Agriculture Academy, where we teach people how to start a profitable business in agriculture. If you are new here, make sure to click on that subscribe button or any of the links mentioned in the video. Links can be found in the description below. Today we're going to show you how to make cuttings like a professional. We will be covering everything you would need to know to have the amazing success with cuttings. Stay tuned to the end and we will be sharing our 5 biggest tips to guarantee you success with cuttings. Let's jump into it.
We are going to begin with Felicia softwood cutting. Examples for semi-hardwood and hardwood cuttings will follow later. Before you start, make sure that you have the following: a mother plant from which you can take your cuttings, a sharp pair of secateurs or scissors, suitable rooting medium, trays or flats on which you can plant your cuttings, a rooting hormone, a fungicide solution, and 2 spray bottles. Fill one of these with water and the other with a solution made up of 10% bleach and 90% water. When it comes to tray size, there are a variety from which you may choose. Trays with bigger cells will supply your cuttings with more room to grow roots, but they take up more space and therefore the amount of cuttings you can plant will be lower. Trays with smaller cells can accommodate more plants, but they will have to be transplanted into bigger trays sooner than those grown in the larger cells. So it is important to consider what resources you have before deciding on the type of tray you are going to use. Give your secateurs a good spray with the bleach solution to sterilize them beforehand. Make your cuts below a node on the stems. You can easily identify the nodes because they usually have leaves growing out of them, or they may bulge slightly if they've yet to grow leaves. Make your cuttings about 5 cm long and remove all but the top 2 leaves, as well as any flowers that may be present. By leaving only the uppermost leaves, your cuttings will still be able to photosynthesize and manufacture energy to grow roots. This act will also minimize the amount of water lost through the leaves and help your cuttings to remain turgid. You can score the bottom of the stems as well. This will increase water and hormone uptake, in addition to removing the outer cuticle which can sometimes obstruct root growth. We are going to use viburnum as an example of a semi-hardwood cutting. Do not take your cuttings from the very soft growth at the ends. Instead, use the hardened wood lower down on the stem. Remove the soft growth and cut at the nodes, leaving at least 2 on your cutting. Remove the excess leaves, and if the remaining ones are too large, you can trim these to about half of their original size. Buxus is a good example of a hardwood cutting. Once again, remove the leaves and cut at the node. It is a good idea to frequently sterilize your secateurs as you cut to prevent any disease spread amongst your cuttings. Fill your trays with the soil mix until the cells are completely full. Pour some of the rooting hormone into a separate container. Dip the bottom 1 to 2 centimeters of the stems into the powder and gently insert them into the trays. Once you have filled your trays with cuttings, they are ready to go into the greenhouse or any other area that is humid and warm. Give your plants a good spray with some water to keep the soil moist. Keep your trays away from direct sunlight, which will scorch and overheat your cuttings. It is also very important to make sure that the soil doesn't dry out, otherwise your cuttings will wilt and die. After a few weeks of being well watered in a warm area, you can expect your trays to look something like this. The cuttings have grown both in length and width. By lifting up the trays, you can also see how well the roots have developed. If we take a closer look, you can gently tug your cuttings and remove them from their cells. You can see here how well they have rooted and bound the soil around them. When your cuttings look like this, you can replant them into larger containers.
I hope you enjoyed the video. So as promised, here are our 5 tips for success with cuttings.
Tip number 1. Your rooting medium must be sufficiently aerated, because without oxygen, roots will never grow. Your soil must also be able to retain enough moisture to keep your cuttings turgid and happy. We recommend a mix of 30% vermiculite and 70% coir. The vermiculite keeps your soil airy and light, whilst the coir retains moisture. However, if you are using a different media and find it to be too heavy, you can mix in some perlite pebbles to aerate it. Tip number 2 relates to the rooting hormone. Remember how we mentioned some plants have softer stems and others more woody, harder stems? Well, softer stems generally root much easier than hardwood stems. When shopping around for rooting hormones, they will be labelled according to the concentration of the active root-inducing compound found within them. Buy the lower concentrations for softwood cuttings like Felicia, the medium concentrations for semi-hardwoods like Viburnum, and the highest concentrations for the hardwoods like Buxus. Tip number 3 is all about the differences between terminal and non-terminal cuttings. As you saw earlier on in the video, sometimes cuts were made at the tips of the stems. These are terminal cuttings. If the cuts are made in the middle of the stems, these are what we call non-terminal cuttings. It is important to know the difference because it will influence how your cuttings will grow and look once they have matured. If you are taking a cutting from a plant that has a Christmas tree or triangular-like appearance, you must always take a terminal cutting. But if your plants have more of a bushy appearance, terminal or non-terminal cuttings will work just fine. By sterilizing your cuttings before you plant them, you are doing your best to prevent disease spread amongst all of your plants. This is especially important because the cuttings you make are all clones of the mother plant. This means that if one plant is infected, it is likely to spread amongst all of your cuttings because they are genetically identical to one another. We use an all-purpose fungicide diluted in water. Take your cuttings and submerge them completely in the solution. Leave them like this for about 1 minute. This is long enough to kill most pathogens and short enough to prevent any damage from occurring to your plants. Leave your cuttings to air dry on a clean, preferably sterile surface. A greenhouse or mist bed is an ideal place to keep your cuttings. Automated sprinkler systems are also a bonus because you can rely on a consistent irrigation program to keep your cuttings constantly watered. Greenhouses also tend to be warmer than room or average outdoor temperatures. This will increase the rate of rooting and allow you to propagate cuttings year-round regardless of the season.
We have created a free infographic with these tips, so hit that link on the screen now, or there's a link below the description. See you soon!